What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by PingPong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Crossover Commerce. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is my literal corner of the internet where I bring the best and brightest in the Amazon and e-commerce space. That's right. I am now sitting in a corner of my basement. This is a different setup than I'm used to, or you might be used to seeing. No fear, this is just a temporary setup. Just for safety and precautions, I'm in my temporary studio setup, so let's just call it what it is today. But if you're joining us for the first time on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you listen to every episode. Again, this is episode 217 of Crossover Commerce. So if you're thinking to yourself, 217 episodes, where can I find out more, Ryan? Glad you asked. Go to usa.pingpongx.com/podcast to check out every past episode of all of our great guests. You'll get the transcripts. You'll get all the great content, all the key takeaways of Amazon and e-commerce experts like our guest today. And shout out to presenting sponsor PingPong Payments, helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money when it comes to sending or receiving payments. That being said, again, episode 217. If you're new to the podcast, we just love having great Amazon and e-commerce experts in the space. This week is no exception. We're gonna have a great 4 guests lined up for you. 2 today. If you only see one maybe on LinkedIn or pending, there's gonna be one later tonight at 7 Eastern. If you want to join us live from the other side of the world in Japan, we have the great Gary Wong of Seven Figure Sellers Summit going to be joining us live. But today and right now, if you're listening to us, that is we have a different guest on today. So I'm really excited. As you know, in this podcast, we have so many great experts in the Amazon e-commerce space, anywhere from people who are starting the brands who have really stood out in the marketing or advertising world, or they talk about global expansion. Well, today we're actually going to be talking with another great company that has emerged in the past couple of years, Boosted Commerce. We're talking with Sarah Deshani of Boosted Commerce. She's the VP of Brand Marketing, and she's going to be talking to us about what we've deemed this title, being digital first, in CPG. What does that mean? What does that mean for you as an Amazon seller looking to either exit your business or just grow it to a fantastic company? That being said, want to welcome to, again, Crossover Commerce, Sarah Deshani of Boosted Commerce. Sarah, thank you so much for tuning in, joining us today on Crossover Commerce.
Thanks so much for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you're pre-show, we were just talking a little bit about where you're located. For everyone who's listening and tuning in, listening live, if you want to say hi to Sarah, everyone just go ahead and put it in the comments section. Let us know where you're listening from. But Sarah, just in the quick, give us a quick background of you and who you are and how we are here today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm VP of Brand Management for the Food and Supplements vertical at Boosted Commerce. I'm living here in right outside of San Francisco in Burlingame, in the middle of Silicon Valley, where there's a lot of people talking about being digital first, as you can imagine. I joined my career kind of went from entrepreneurship in the food sector to being a marketer in the CPG space to really wanting to learn all the playbooks about being digital first, and that's what led me to Boosted Commerce.
That's amazing. So what would you do real quickly? What were we doing before Boosted? Were you a VP of brand management for another company in the similar category? What was that background like?
Well, I kind of have 3 chapters to my career before Boosted. The first chapter was kind of a classic consulting background where I went and worked for a consulting management company abroad, actually in Dubai and also in Silicon Valley. And I got to learn really the basics of strategic management. After that, I decided to go after what was my dream at the time and still really is, which is building a socially conscious business in the food space. So I spent a year working with farmers abroad. I spent time at pastry school and business school, and I ultimately launched a food business in London with a business partner. And I was baking every day, and we were manufacturing food and trying to source from those farmers abroad. selling at this department store called Harrods. And it was, as all of the entrepreneurs know, blood, sweat, and tears. And eventually, the company got to a point where it was commercially successful, but not doing the social work that I wanted it to do. And so I came back to the US, and I realized that I needed to learn more. And that's what put me in the CPG space. So I knew I needed to learn about digital. So I needed to learn about digital marketing. So became a marketer in the CPG space, and then made my way through a startup CPG, worked at a brand owned by Procter and Gamble, and then eventually landed at Boosted.
That's amazing. I mean, talk about bearing the lead. You were talking about building out your own pastry business, and if my wife were listening right now, she'd be very jealous. I mean, this is something that you're talking about. Are you talking about eco-friendly baking, or like what's the notion of
Yeah, the
that
social part of
business?
it. Yeah.
Okay,
The,
yeah,
the social part of it was that in undergraduate, I have an international background in my family. And in undergrad, I realized that a lot of the people that I have interacted with abroad just don't have access to the same opportunities that we have in the States. And so I really was looking at sort of public policy and ways that we could help solve that. And it came upon this idea of social entrepreneurship, which was about using business to help improve people's income situations and their poverty. So the idea of my whole business, this is making a very long story short,
no, it's okay.
but the idea of my business was that, basically, if you want to help anybody, you kind of have to humble yourself first and see, like, well, they probably know what they need better than I know what they need. So I spent a year with farmers in Jordan, olive oil farmers, pomegranate farmers. They were making something called pomegranate molasses, apple cider vinegar, all of these beautiful products. And they came to me and they were like, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from the States." And they said, "Oh, you're from America." They're like, "Sell our products abroad." They like immediately knew that what would help them improve their lives would be a business that brought their raw materials, or bought, sorry, their raw materials, and then sold them in markets like London. And if you think about, in the roll up space, people talk a lot about arbitrage. If you think about the arbitrage of a British pound sterling, right? Somebody buying something for British pound sterling, what that means in terms of income with the exchange rate for a farmer living in Jordan, it's quite significant. And so that was the whole premise of the business. That was what we were trying to accomplish.
That's amazing. I congratulations on just even trying to attempt that. I think those are kinds of businesses that are even more difficult than just starting in the restaurant space, or I say in the food space, because again, those kind of passions obviously carry over, and it can either be super successful or even encounter even more hurdles than just throwing something in a package, or like you said, there's no thought behind it. And I think that's really cool of the brand itself. It's speaking to a notion of who you are as a company, what you're really focused on. And I think that's fantastic. So you walked away from that, you sold the business. What can you
Well,
incap it?
yeah, so we had found quite a bit of commercial success. We were selling in Harrods. We had actually, as clients, the Sultan of Brunei, who owned the Dorchester Hotel Group. So we had quite a bit of commercial success. But I mentioned the first part of my career was in management consulting. So I had learned how to build financial models in that part of my career. And so I built a financial model, and I was like, how big can we get this thing? Because anybody who's done food knows that the margins are thin, right?
Super thin.
Let alone like doing a socially conscious food business. And so I said, well, we need massive volume. And I just found that actually, if we really, really succeeded in the UK, we wouldn't get to the volume that we needed for to be able to place the MOQs, the minimum order quantities from those farmers abroad.
Great.
I was like, okay, I'm not going to. It was so hard just to like be selling in Harrods in the first place. I was baking 10 hours a day. I mean, it was really, really, really tiring. And so I was like, I'm not going to put all of this effort in so that at the end of the day, I'm not even able to
Right.
do what I originally wanted, which is support those farmers by purchasing from them directly.
So you found yourself doing more like shortcuts, I would say, probably to just meet quantity or to meet your expectation, your invoices from Harrods. Is that kind
Yeah,
of
it
along
was
those lines?
well, what I was doing was I was flat out just trying to fulfill the orders that Harrods was sending our way.
Yeah.
And I basically did not have time to figure out a way to expand the business.
Wow.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So you moved that. You said there's more opportunity in different countries. You needed to market it more. You needed to kind of develop that idea. Is that something you'd ever come back to, or is this something that it's kind of like you did that was your dream, you accomplished what you set out to do, and now you're moving on? Is
No,
there
it's still there. I still have to figure it out. And so
Hey,
yeah.
I was gonna say, if you need test market, hey, send it to Indiana over here.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, the
more than
recipe
happy to help.
development's fun. Yeah, the recipe development's super fun.
Well, hey, congratulations. I mean, that's a great story, and I think it leads into what you're doing now. I mean, it just makes that seamless transition, I would say. So you learned marketing, obviously, very centric on food, in that regards, and now you're moving over to, uh, boosted commerce, which is again digital first in that notion. Uh, tell me about this process. Like, why boosted? Why was this the next natural fit for you?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll tell you one quick story about
Sure,
the food business that leads to this answer.
please do. Yeah.
Yeah, so when we were marketing our products to Harrods, we walked the floor with one of the Harrods shopkeepers. And if anybody is sold in retail, you know that they have a planogram and it's really fixed. Like what the way the store looks is the way it is, and you try to get slotted somewhere. And she told us, you should try to get, this was, by the way, when Instagram didn't even have ads yet. Instagram was just people posting pictures. And so there's no digital advertising on Instagram. So she said, if you try to get this one influencer to post about your products, we will redraw the planogram to have your products front and center because she drives so much foot traffic into our store. And I had no idea what she was talking about. And so I realized I needed to learn all of that. That was my first taste of digital marketing,
Right. You
influencer
just
marketing.
shook your head and you're like, "Sounds great." Like,
Yeah, it's like, sounds great.
somebody
And then
online's gonna send all this foot traffic. How does that work? Yeah, exactly.
exactly. It just didn't make sense to me. And I even looked at the Instagram profiles. I was like, I don't really get this. So I realized I needed to learn. So that's what put me in the marketing world in CPG. So I went to an organic baking company, worked there as a marketer. And then I learned all of the basics around Facebook advertising, SEO. That's where I started managing Amazon businesses as well. And then I moved on to a company called Walker and Company that had just been bought by Procter and Gamble. And they were in the personal care and beauty space. And so the another company that got bought at the same time was Native Deodorants, which I'm sure many
Right.
people have heard of. And so we were part of this class that entered Procter and Gamble, both Walker and Company and Native, and we got to not only learn from everyone's digital marketing tactics that way, but I also got to see the way a brand powerhouse builds and maintains their brands. And so the only thing that was bugging me about all of this was that, I was working even at Procter and Gamble. It was a startup company that Procter and Gamble had acquired. Before that was another startup. These are all privately backed, private investors or venture capital investors had backed the companies. And at the time, the goal was revenue growth, not profitable growth, but revenue growth with the goal of selling at a multiple of revenue. But these businesses, more often than not, were unprofitable. I was an entrepreneur. I had just come from an entrepreneurial experience, and I could not understand why you would build a business that was not profitable. It didn't I can of course now looking back see the answer, but I at the time I said this doesn't make sense. And when I build a business, I want it to be a profitable business. And that's when Boosted came along. And one of my friends was working at Boosted, and he was recruiting, and I told him, "Hey, what's this company?" And he told me, "Oh, we acquire profitable CPG businesses and we grow them profitably." And I was like, "What? How do you do that? So you guys are profitable from day one? So it's not like this thing where, you know, the budgets don't make sense because everything is still not quite getting to profitability. He's like, yeah, no, we start out profitably and we build it profitably. And so I said, well, I want to be with the people who think like that because I need to learn how to think like that. So that's what brought me here.
No, that's amazing. Well, that's a good notion in terms of going, obviously, that story and that background into where we are today. So your role there at Boosted, again, everyone knows there's so many different excellent companies out there. What's different about Boosted from your mind that sets it apart from everyone else in the space? And I say, like, there's so many businesses out there, business models similar esque to a roll-up or an aggregator is the term that you can say it, but you guys claim that you're different than everyone else. What is those distinguishing factors for you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you, I don't look a lot at what our competitors are doing. So I don't know what they're doing, but I do know what I think is special about Boosted for
Yeah,
sure.
please
So
do.
yeah, so what I think is special about Boosted is number one is we're focused. So when I say focus is we are focused on certain types of companies that we want to buy. We have a profile for what we want to buy. We're starting to understand, well, what are the synergies in our portfolio of businesses that would direct our M&A strategy. That's one thing that's really important. If you can imagine the complexity of managing one Amazon business, imagine if you're managing 30 Amazon businesses and they all have different vendors,
Right.
right? Like it's a nightmare. So there has to be some level of focus and a thesis around the M&A strategy. The second thing is that we have a lot of brand people. And so the story that I like to tell here is that when, you know, I had no idea what a roll-up model is. The roll-up is another way of saying aggregator. So when I joined Boosted, I was like, oh, CPG of the future. That sounds great. And then
Portfolio
after
company,
I
yeah.
joined, sorry, what was that, Ryan?
I was gonna say portfolio or anything. There's other terms that
Yes,
sound so much
exactly.
more eloquent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know, you know, I don't know what those terms mean. And so when I joined, one of my friends after I joined, like after I signed the contract, he goes, oh, you're in private equity now. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, now you're in private equity. Like you've left product. Now you're like an investor type. And I told him, that's so funny. I know nothing about private equity. Why would they have hired me? And so that's my way of sort of showing that Boosted, we do have brand people, right? Like
Right.
people like me who, like, you know, have built businesses, think about the customer, think about the product. And I don't know, maybe other aggregators have that. I don't know who they have on their teams, but we spend a lot of time doing interviews with customers, trying to figure out the decision trees that they follow to make their purchasing decisions. We try to understand not just like the keywords, right, that matter, but why do those keywords matter? Like, what is it that's driving people's behavior? What is it that in that product that sparks their interest beyond the fact that it's ranking number one on the first page of search results?
Right. So you're doing more. You were saying this pre-show. We're not a widget company. I think this is pre-show.
Yeah.
You're not a widget company. You're a brand and a CPG company. And I like to know, and I think a lot of people like that distinction. I personally like the distinction. What makes a company not a widget company but a CPG company in your mind, Sarah?
The number one thing is thinking about the customer. That's the number one thing. At the end of the day, it's so easy when you're running an Amazon business to never touch the product, right? You just call the vendor and say, you know, package it. Here's a PO. Please go and package the product. You know, send it in LTL or parcel to FBA. You see it get you see it get scanned in, hopefully without delays, and then the money starts to roll in, right? It just starts getting sold, and the money starts to roll in, and you can go on that way for years, right? And that's when it starts to feel like a widget because you're not really touching it. You don't really know who's buying it. Amazon does this terrible thing where they distance you from the customer, and so you can't really talk to them. But the way to get out of that is to start to understand who is your community, who's buying from you. If you're selling a product that is, let's say, better for you shampoo, are the people who are buying that pregnant women, because they now are, you know, they're pregnant, they're going to have a kid, and they want to make sure nothing toxic goes into their hair. If you know that, and you know that's the reason they're buying your shampoo, that gives you a ton of information about how you can make it better for them, how you can speak to their concerns in your marketing, how you can drive retention marketing with them, make sure that they stay engaged with your product and interested in it. And then you can think about the life cycle after that. Well, then they have a baby. Do you want to make something for their babies, right? And then they have that continuity of brand. So that's really the difference, is thinking about the customer.
Right. Well, I think that that's an important distinction too of if I'm a person or a brand entrepreneur on Amazon or a CPG company or a CP or direct to consumer company or DDC or CPG company, and I want to either if I want to exit my business or sell a business, I think this is a natural thing you want to learn is I want to put my brand in the hands of somebody who understands those capabilities, right? I want to go with somebody who understands what the difference is going to be of I know my target audience, we can grow, we can relate to that. And not everyone again, we were talking agnostic versus very, very specific in terms of category focus. And again, those can still be broad, but it's more focused in, hey, we don't deal with electronics or fashion. Like don't go to someone else for that. We are really focused in food, consumer care, something maybe consumable or put it on top of you, eco-friendly, whatever you want to categorize yourself under that notion. Is that what is exciting for someone in your position as brand management of, yes, our B&D team is not going to bring in an electronic whatchamacallit, and we have to figure out how to sell that to a consumer. That's widget-based marketing. That's now this is just focused marketing in that
Yeah,
regards.
yeah, and our BD team and our M&A team are incredible. I mean, they know our business. You know, they like sometimes I look at people on their team and I go, oh, I'd like to take them over to my operations team. You know, like it's and you that's rare.
Stealing within the company.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are quite a few people actually who I'd be like, you would be great on my team. And that's rare to see somebody who's like in finance, or as they say, finance, to have to try to have somebody like that.
They're gonna
Um,
make themselves sound really, very uppity. I won't say uppity. Sound
that,
very, posh, if you will.
that's the show, finance. Um, but yeah, I mean, to try to be on the brand management side and look over at that side and say, oh, I'd love to have them on my team. That speaks a lot to like the fact that we're in this together, we're thinking the same way, we listen to each other. They care about the business after the transaction is over.
That's really cool. So, upon I know post we've talked about this on the podcast before of that how important it is after acquisition is happening when you get to sit down with your company with the former owner and your team and you can say what were you going through, what are those steps that you were looking for, what's some insight that we can grow this. Do you have those natural interactions with brand owners after acquisition, or do you just have to absorb everything you can from the instance that they're selling off to a boosted or you're acquiring them? What is that conversation like, and how do you keep them involved in the process?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it starts at the from the moment we sign an LOI, and sometimes I get involved before the LOI is signed as well, just to talk to them and explain to them a bit like who would be taking care of their business. But from the stage of the LOI, we have our routine diligence calls, and that's where I really get to know the founders, and more importantly, also my team that's doing the day to day management of the business gets to know the founders as well. And then once the deal closes, it's like we say, you don't just sort of hand the keys over and walk away. It's really a transition process. So that's one of the things that Boosted does incredibly well, which is the management of basically a 120-day transition process that starts 30 days before close and ends 90 days after close. And there's a series of it's structured differently for each brand. It depends on the complexity. There may be consulting arrangements. There may be just a series of meetings that happen every week to allow for the smooth transition. But a lot gets discussed in those meetings.
I bet. Has it ever been a notion where you see something where it's not fitting either portfolio or criteria or just voice that you've had to step in and say, this is not, although everything else looks good, this may not fit for us as a company, as a CPG company. Do you have those conversations, those tough conversations within your own team?
Within our own team, with between the brand management team, or the supply chain team, marketing team, and the M&A team, yeah, we have those conversations all the time.
Yeah,
All the
well,
time. I mean, it's something that I think is like a hallmark of good thinking, is that there's a lot of debate.
right. Well, and I would think that would naturally have to be a good thing, because if you start to accept everyone, again, you start to lose yourself as a, kind of going back to your old business, if you will, of where I see the correlation happening of, you might have to not shortchange yourself, but you might have to, compromise in certain areas. Like you said, if you want to be an eco-friendly company, if Boosted wants to say we're eco-friendly, we want to be like Amazon, we want to be net carbon neutral or something like that by 2050 or something along those lines. Again, if you start to take on everyone and they're like, well, we can maybe change some of those things down the road, or maybe we can do XYZ. Is that something that either you have to stand up for, or is there a lot of people that are on the same page in that regards?
Yeah, this starts speaking to sort of the politics within the company, right? Because there are different incentives, across the different groups. The M&A group has an incentive to acquire businesses, whereas the brand management group has an incentive to grow the businesses. And more often than not, those two incentives overlap, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's like, well, acquiring this business may be good for us getting another deal in, but it may not be good for us because we don't think we can grow it as much as would be required by or dictated by the multiple. Or we like the business, but it has, like, for example, let's say that, in the supplements line, we're saying it's like a kids focused supplements line, and I would say we don't do kids supplements. Like, if we do that, I need to, my first mind goes to general counsel, right? We need to have somebody on the legal side who can really advise us on how we can make sure that we're doing this, because products for children are held to a higher standard than products for adults. And so those types of conversations do happen. I've and anybody who's worked with me will tell you that I have no problem speaking up and speaking my opinion, to a fault, perhaps. And so, there's that, but then there's also, like, the whole team has our back. And so you won't have, there may be someone on M&A who agrees with me, and then somebody who disagrees, someone on the ops side who disagrees with me. And there'll be that debate, and it'll be vigorous. But ultimately, whatever decision we come to, everyone accepts it and moves on.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, I mean, that's healthy, I think, within any sort of company of how do you grow that next iteration. I think a lot of roll-up companies or aggregators or whomever you want to dictate the name, a lot of people want to be around for a long time and build up those portfolios, and like you said, be the next Procter and Gamble, or be the next consumer based product focused brand company that's digital first. So that being said, that's your job from what I'm hearing at the company. Sarah, what is, a lot of people think, when you say, hey, building and growing a brand, that's your job. It's solely on, once the acquisition is made by the M&A team and the business development team, now it's on you and your team to kind of make that next natural leap and take that vision and really not shotgun it, but really make it blossom. What are those kinds of first building blocks that you go through with your team? Is it, how do we optimize in digital, or how do we optimize on direct to consumer, or maybe retail? What are those first things that you look at with the company?
Yeah, so I'll talk to you a little bit about the frameworks that we have there, and then I'll mention a few of the pieces of that framework. So within my vertical, food and supplements, what I do is, I mentioned one of the reasons I joined Boosted is because they grow businesses profitably. That means, when I heard that, I said, well, that means that they know the playbooks. And I looked at the founders, right, Keith and Charlie, and I go, okay, they have a lot of experience. Surely they know playbooks. So when I joined, I immediately, right, talking to them about what are your playbooks to grow. More people joined the company. I learned their playbooks. I brought my own playbooks. And then essentially I had all of these options, right? Like, we had like 20 to 40 initiatives a menu of 20 to 40 initiatives we could choose from after close to grow the business. And the question is, well, which one do I do first and why? So, and that's paralysis of choice, right? It's not a good thing to have a lot of options if you don't know what to do.
Right.
And so, and this is actually what kills companies all the time is lack of focus, right? Because you try to do it all. And so what I said was, okay, let's create archetypes. So we went into the verticals and we created what we called brand archetypes. And the archetypes, we have fancy internal names around what they're branded as, but we get 3 archetypes in a vertical. And those archetypes are determined by about 9 criteria. So we actually have an index where we rank each brand against 9 criteria, and it spits out an archetype. And that archetype will dictate to you out of those 40 initiatives, which ones do you layer in first and why? Mm. And so once you get that archetype, so I acquire a brand very early on, I look at the brand and I know what the archetype is, right? Like I don't need to do the indexing, I could, but I know which archetype it's going to fall into. And so I know out of my 40 initiatives, they need to be layered in this particular way. And then once you get to that stage, what we say is we focus on the inputs, not the output, right? So the output is net margin growth, for example, velocity growth, whatever you want to call it. But the inputs are what are going to get you there. And the inputs, number one, I'll just list 3 of the 6 inputs that we look at. You look at your supply chain first, no product, no sales, account health, right? With Amazon, account health is like this whole thing, right?
Oh yeah.
And then there are a few other things, and then we have promotions at the top, promotional activity, PPC, social media ads, email marketing, Amazon Live, all of that stuff. And there are a few other things in there as well. But so those are the inputs. And so all the initiatives get flooded, categorized into those inputs, all of the initiatives get categorized into those input categories, and then we go ahead and execute against it.
Is that spend? What are you putting? I just want to be clear on is it a yes no statement, or is it a volume statement of this is how much like sales are coming in from like you said through cost per for CPC or anything, or a PPC. I'm gonna get the acronym right, or something like that. You're saying you're putting inputs. What is that you were putting in? Is it data? Is it sales? What is it you're inputting?
Well, it's philosophically, like a lot of teams, for example, if they're focused, that's meant to be more of a philosophical anchoring point. So okay. if you have a team, let's say you've got a team of brand managers and they look at, and you tell them you need to grow revenue. I want to see revenue grow 20% year over year. They may do a lot of things to grow revenue 20% year over year, only so that the next year it'll fall by 40%, right? They just might do a lot of low quality hacky tactics to get revenue up 20% year over year.
You're talking about, for example, like a launch technique, if it was giveaways or something like that, whether it be ranking tactics we've seen in the past, it could be 80% conversion or 100% conversion. But again, even if that dips a little bit, Amazon naturally just torpedoes you down in that regard. So just one example I'm assuming that you're talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, that would be one example. And so then rather than having them focus on the outputs, we tell them focus on the inputs. So the inputs would be an input, for example, would be ad spend. That would be an input, right? Like you need to look at the ad spend. Is it optimized correctly? And therefore, are you getting a quality output? So it's not just, if we can take PPC as an example, do you have a great ACOS because you're spending only on branded keywords? Well, that's not a great input. You've got an output where your ACOS looks good, but the input is not good. You're spending on branded keywords. You need to be spending also on non-branded, and you need to have a strategy around whether you want to win the category or you want to win the long tail keywords, or what is it exactly. And so all of that becomes sort of a focus on the inputs of how are you going to go about doing that. And that's where we get into the initiatives where we say, okay, well, we've done this 800 times. Here's what we think is the right way to do it.
Yeah. That makes sense. Do you find yourself finding that a lot of the businesses you guys are acquiring are pretty optimized for Amazon, or is it that next step, that retail or different marketplace aspect that you really that's where you initially have to start because hey, Amazon's pretty good. Like there's not too much to optimize or tweak in that regards, maybe a few things, but what is it that you're seeing most often with all the brands that Boosted
It
is acquiring?
it's that's an amazing question because that's exactly what the archetypes are all about. Is
Okay.
it's about looking at the business and figuring out where do you take it from here. And there in some businesses, yeah, you look at the Amazon business. There's some businesses where I just go, oh, you guys have been out of stock too often. Right? Like if I can just keep you in stock, I can grow the business 20% year over year. There's some businesses we've acquired like a there are other businesses you look at the Amazon, you got it's like I can't do much more with this business. We have to build out our Shopify site, and
That
hope
makes
that that
sense.
off Amazon traffic will help.
Well, that I'm assuming because of the natural on the M&A side, it's a little bit different because that's where the value comes from, but they also have to probably talk with you in the regards of where is that true growth potential? If it's not on Amazon and there's not quote a lift that you can make on the Amazon, your numbers become instantly more difficult because you don't have the optimization as much on Amazon. Now you
Yes.
have to go through a different channel, whether it be a different marketplace or a different country or even a direct to consumer channel, like you said, build out their Shopify store or their WooCommerce or whatever that looks like. So
Mhm.
interesting that you have to take those notions and go there. How often does like retail come into conversation? Whether it's like, hey, this brand has a conversation or already is in a store,
Mhm.
has a relationship with like a Walmart or a Home Depot or something along those lines. Um, does that happen often, or are you surprised it doesn't have to opt as often as you might think, or you guys are having like that's one of the easiest areas for you to optimize and grow under?
Well, we definitely have those conversations. Foxy Bay, like I mentioned, one of our most recent acquisitions are just launched in Target, and so we have those conversations all the time. And um, it that one for me, I always think of supply chain when I think of that, right? Because I'm thinking about I'm never really concerned that we can sell into a retailer. That's not really my concern or maintain that relationship once we have it. I'm more concerned about making sure that the back end when we are fulfilling all of these products and accepting POs that come in on pallets, right? What are we able to actually manage this efficiently across our entire supply chain system. That's what I think more about. But yeah, for sure. I mean, the more wholesalers you have, the more retail partners you have, the more complexity you get from that fulfillment and logistics standpoint.
Absolutely. Well, it's just as we say on this channel all the time, is you have to think about commerce as a whole and where it's happening. And e-commerce in all of retail is of all 100% retail. E-commerce is maybe 15%, maybe 16 or 17% on Q4, and that means that there's 80 plus percent where commerce is happening. It's in retail and it's on store shelves and in retail stores of some area. So when people look at it that regards, obviously e-commerce is huge in our industry, but when you look at it in just all of commerce, there's so much opportunity in terms of retail. Not a bad thing, but that's where I think a lot of people go from digital, obviously first, and then they move into the retail second. So is that something that I guess like for if you're in 2022 and Sarah, you and your team had like your plan of okay, well, we have our established brands. You said Foxy Bay, which again, I think that was the most recent one that you announced as acquired for the company of your 20 to 30 plus brands that you guys are operating. What's the outlook for 2022? Is there a set of goals or overarching statement goals that you and your team are trying to accomplish this year, and what are those?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I mean we're big on goals at Boosted. So we definitely have a set of goals, and we have them at different levels. We have them at the executive level, at my org level, the brand management level, and we have them even further down within our different functional areas as well. And so I think there is a big piece certainly about bringing more of our brands to retail. That is part of our goal for 2022. There's, I can't get into too much detail about all of the things that we're doing, but there's a lot of stuff also, that really exciting stuff we're doing with data, right? Like, we're swimming in data at Boosted. And so there are a lot of interesting things that we're doing that are going to be not only useful to us, but also useful to FBA sellers, right? And people that we've acquired businesses from.
That's interesting. Is there any tease of what are you, for example, utilizing the data? Is that to be smarter in terms of advertising, or is that just like where shopper behavior is? Is that what you're talking about there?
It's really all of the above. It's
Okay.
really all of the above. So, and it even gets into things about, if an FBA seller really wants to understand how they can acquire customers at more favorable, cost per acquisition, CPAs, we can even support them there. So there's a lot of things that we are doing that really are, I think, going to be exciting once they get announced later in the year.
Oh man, what a tease. Yeah, and I'm assuming you're pulling from your background too in that regards of you were talking about influencers. I think there's a lot of conversation around off of Amazon to on Amazon and how do you build on these multiple verticals. Is there something that you feel that you haven't got a grasp on yet? You were saying like, hey, I had to learn digital marketing for CPG. Is there something that you're still learning and excited to learn about in the space right now as time continues to evolve when you're at Boosted?
Oh, there are so many things. There are so many things. I mean, one of the things for me that I'm watching closely and I'm still fascinated by is just TikTok and the opportunity to monetize there.
Sure.
And I think that is an area that's really fascinating. I I still come from, my mindset is still, I grew up shopping at Walmart, right? Like, so I my mindset is still very much, and I grew up without the internet as well. So my mindset is like, oh, brands make money because they win the shelves in Walmart. So you
Right.
can go to a Walmart or a Target, like Procter and Gamble owns Tide, right? Tide detergent. If you go into a Target, you notice like the detergent aisle is just Tide. There's a small section for Method or All or any other, but it's all red. And so for me, growing up, I was like, oh, Tide is the brand, right? Like, you buy it when it's on sale and then you stock up, but it's the brand, it's the premium brand, all of that. I had one source of information, and that was the same, right? With, you remember TV, cable, all of that. That was the same. It was one source. It was Peter Jennings. He was telling us what the news was. But now there's all this stuff telling you information. All this stuff telling you information. And so Procter and Gamble is starting to lose its hold on the customer, because the customer isn't just hearing about brands through, TV advertising and shelf space. They're hearing about brands through Amazon, through Instagram, through TikTok, through the D2C websites, through Facebook ads, although those have gotten really expensive, through all of these other channels. And so you start to look at, like, well, start to think really, like, the pie is getting chopped up
Yeah, quite a bit.
quite a bit. And so you start to say, like, well, who can survive with all of these little slivers, because at
Does
some
it
point
I was gonna say, does that make your job that much more difficult in that capacity?
yeah, it makes it difficult because taking market share, but it makes it difficult, but it also makes me feel like we have the advantage, because okay, let's just talk about Amazon, right? Like, let's say it's a product that customers, if they want to buy it, they're not going to go to Target, Walmart, a specialty store, and like a few other stores to try to look for it. They're
Sure.
just going to go to Amazon, type in the term, and buy it. That type of a brand, I know that I can steal market share just by conquesting keywords, right? I know that I can consolidate that way, and we'd be bigger than if I was in 5,000 Target stores.
Mhm.
I'd be bigger because the Target stores are in these areas where I get one slot on the bottom of the shelf. Maybe I get half a turn a week,
Yeah.
and I all of a sudden don't, after a while, the buyers will go, well, no one's really buying it. I'm like, well, yeah, I know, because no one can find
The
me.
visibility, yeah, where it's placed, everything like
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And so in that, with those types of brands, no, I feel really confident. But yeah, when it comes to like, a food or a supplement brand where I'm up against like a company owned by Unilever, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
What is your philosophy on branded search terms? In the capacity of, do you prefer someone searching for that brand on Amazon, or do you prefer to win the battle of natural or like organic XYZ, like organic laundry detergent or something along those lines? Branded being searching for like a Foxy, like the brand you acquired, or hey, I want to have that specific keyword that ties to our company. Which one do you prefer?
I prefer the non-branded, for sure. I
Okay.
prefer the non-branded. I mean, the I but I have a very specific background, like history in this, where when I was running Amazon businesses previously and I would work with ad agencies, we measured them against ACOS, and they would often improve their ACOS numbers by spending against our branded keywords. And I really didn't like that, because I was like, well, I think I would win that anyway. Right? Like if someone's searching for my brand, I don't want to spend on that. Unless a competitor is attacking us, but for the most part they weren't. And so, you know, I was like, I don't want to spend on that. If they're searching for my brand, let them search for my brand. I've won them. I would rather grow profitably again with non-branded keywords. Um, so that's my background, and so it gives me a bias to prefer those non-branded keywords.
No, that makes complete sense to me. So you're a person who doesn't spend on their unbranded name on PPC on Google. You don't have ads
Well,
at the top.
well, luckily, I'm not the one who makes all of the decisions on this, so we do spend on branded for sure,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, with me, I'm that it's certainly my eyes don't look at the results on branded
Oh
keywords.
man, I always feel bad when I search for her brand, and I always try to not click on the ad because I know
Me
exactly why they're bidding
too.
on themselves.
Yeah,
Socially conscious marketer
I
over
it's
here. It's
it
like
is very socially conscious.
I'm gonna save them a nickel here.
Yeah,
So
that's nice of you. Yeah.
exactly. Well, Sarah, I appreciate your time. I obviously I would talk more today, but you guys are so busy. Tell me about what you're excited about in 20. We kind of alluded to goals, but if people like, first and foremost, what's your personal like accomplishment that you want to achieve here in 2022 with Boosted? Like what is that ultimate personal goal for you that you
Yeah,
want to see
it's
happen?
it's very clear for me. I have 2 or 3 brands that are on the cusp of blossoming into what I think can become household name brands. And I want to start to see that flower bloom this year. So I want to start launching our rebrands, launching our D2C sites, launching our like new portfolio of products, and just start to say, oh my God. And I love talking to the founders when this happens. Like, look at what you started with, look at what you created, and look at what it's become. That's what I'm really excited about this year.
That's really cool. And you guys are pretty prevalent. You guys are forthright in which brands you acquire. I think that's really cool of, hey, this is not a secret. Like we're not gonna not tell people that we now have partnered or acquired and this is the brand we're growing. So that's really neat. In that regards, if they want to learn more information or just connect with you, what are those best ways to do that, either with Boosted or yourself, Sarah?
Yeah, so with Boosted, you can always go to boostedcommerce.com, and we have a lot of ways there to interact with the company. Another option for me, you can always email me at Sarah, SARAH, at boostedcommerce.com as well.
Gotcha. I'm just clicking buttons here. I don't even know what I'm doing over here. So if you see, no one freak out. It's just me clicking buttons here in the background. No, that's amazing. I think that's so cool to see kind of the back end of post acquisition. Obviously, what people's mentality is, and to have that perspective on what you guys are doing. How many is it public knowledge? How many brands do you guys operate? Is that something that you guys are
Yeah,
forthright?
we have over 35.
Over 35. Is there a goal in mind for you guys this year of you would like to see
Many, many
175?
more. Yeah,
Blink twice when I get to the number, and then
exactly,
that's the number.
exactly.
No, that's okay. As many as you can handle, I would say, like, right? That's the
Yeah.
is that I guess my final question for you, is that something that you're fearful of acquiring too many brands that you don't give it enough attention to or enough love and support?
Uh,
Is that very fearful for
I
you?
I yes, yes, but we are super aware of that. So,
Okay.
like, I don't think we're gonna do that.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. Obviously.
Yeah.
Side note of I don't think that's gonna be a problem, but I know that's obviously,
It could
what
be.
comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you hire
Yeah,
support or do you hire brands? So,
yeah.
very cool. Sarah, thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Commerce today. I always end the show saying that you can make it through an episode with me, you're now a friend of the show because you've lasted in my corner of the internet now for an hour. I would say it's like it's not a fight, but it's a great conversation as always. So, you're more welcome to hop on any time in the future. Thank you so much for joining us today in Crossover Commerce.
Thank you, Ryan,
No
appreciate it.
problem. Thank you, everyone, for hopping on again on a live session of Crossover Commerce. This is episode 217 of Crossover Commerce, my show where I bring you the best and brightest in the Amazon and e-commerce space. If it looks again, I'm gonna allude it to it. We're a minimalist background today. Hopefully we'll add to it here in the next couple episodes, but we have more episodes coming tonight. Just kind of quick a preview. If you're joining us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter, check out tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're gonna be talking with Gary Wong, top takeaways from seven-figure sellers in 2022. Of course, Gary is a friend of the show, so we love having him come back on and talk about Seven-Figure Seller Summit that is coming up in a few weeks. So without further ado, I'm Ryan Kramer. This is Crossover Commerce. We'll catch you guys next time on another episode. Take care.